There it
That's
is.
a nice thought, but then
It's
you're gonna
I
have
wouldn't
to.
do it because then you're playing that tricky game, and you're
You
doing
have
more than
balance
that.
game.
Yeah.
Then you have to increase your media that you're using for your phosphate because there's gonna be more phosphate available.
All right, guys, welcome back to the New Wave After Dark podcast, a podcast where reefing enthusiasts talk about reefing and the most debatable topics in it. Hopefully, we can find some conclusions along the way. My name is Brendan. Here with me is Senor Caesar and Ted, the Mountain Man Morse. So today on our today on our podcast, we're going to be talking about a pretty broad subject. So we'll see how long this goes, but we're going to be talking about feeding your fish in your aquarium, all the different aspects of that, different things to look out for, all the things of that nature. So
I think the statement there is all of the things and the stuff
of that nature.
of that nature.
No,
So
before we start, though, we gotta make sure that people understand that this is based on our experience only, and we are not responsible for any
disclaimer.
misused information.
I'd say take it with a grain of salt, but
Yeah,
also
exactly.
not really, because we do have quite a few years of experience messing with aquariums. I'd like to say understanding, but let's be honest,
Yeah.
messing with.
Yeah, experimenting. with.
Come to your own conclusions using the information we provide, and
Right.
and do that with every single episode. So this is all, it's going to be a lot of opinions. Some of it might be factual. And then it's going to be up to you to kind of decide. So
I like to say true fact on those ones.
True fact.
True fact.
Yeah.
True fact.
we're still, it's all these years, we're still learning stuff in this hobby. So
All right.
That's the joy of it.
I would like to say too, before we get into the topic, last week on our episode, we were talking about favorite fish. Now that I, had a week to look at the tank and all the fish I had in it, I want to change my answers. The prettiest fish, I want to go towards Tamini Tang. Caesar, I know you love that. And then personality wise,
Tamini Tang?
Midas Blenny.
Midas Blenny.
I love watching
Midas
that fish.
are
Yeah.
awesome. Yep.
So I just
For
want to
sure.
throw that out there before we got into the
For sure,
Tamini
Midas
topic.
are, but I'm going to have to give you a real hard time about the Tamini.
Yeah.
I
Tang.
like it. See, I'm a
Tamini
clean,
Tang?
simple guy. I like how the orange stands out, especially in blue lighting.
And also how the brown stands out.
Yeah,
And I-
like a big turd.
It's like a Dugfish, a big
Well,
brown rare special
To
fish.
me, they look more gray than brown.
I say
but
brown. Brown and khaki
Yeah.
is what I get from them.
I mean, they're not.
They have
ugly
their-
fish by any means.
They have their usefulness too in the
Yeah.
aquarium. They
They're-
are definitely a
they're
great
utilitarian
utilitarian
fish.
one.
And I like the body shape in the bristletooth family more
Yeah.
than the general surgeon fish.
And they do stay relatively
I-
small too, so I give you props on that as well.
I mean, the one in our grow out is
It's a chunky
This
monkey.
is-
Or
decent.
bristled yellow eye thing.
Yellow. Ooh,
yellow.
that's a nice
Most
one.
people
Yellow.
would say the whitetail, but
Well, that one too,
But he's senior.
yeah. I'm simple too. I don't,
yeah.
white
Well,
tail or not.
I mean, if we're talking about tangs, you guys want to talk about like feeding tangs? Like, do you need to feed nori
Seaweed,
every day?
yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if every day, but I definitely think that most of their food needs to be in nori and or some sort of algae for them.
Seaweed extreme,
Yep,
something like that.
something of that nature. You cannot feed tangs just meaty frozen foods and or even like a TDO or something along those lines. They need to have that herbivore side in their diet. Otherwise, I
Right.
think they get a lot more of that lateral line disease and or they lose a lot of their coloration as well. I've noticed purple tangs, especially if you don't feed them some sort of veggie, they get mad
And
real
we,
quick.
we know for sure that it helps their immune system
Mhm.
because that's like the primary stuff they feed on. We should be probably, and also, but we gotta be careful. We gotta be careful of not overfeeding seaweed because it does have a lot
a
of
lot of
phosphates.
phosphates. Yeah.
So, and that's one of them.
And I think how much you feed nori will be dependent on your tank too. How much algae do you have in there? Because then you might be able to get away with every other day feedings versus every day. If you got a clean tank, you shouldn't have an issue
Size
running
tank
every day or
probably
more.
matters.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And what else you got in there too? Because if you have some angels in there, they're going to pick at the
Right.
algae as well. Now here's another conversation topic for us. When you're putting it on the clip, do you like to keep it as tight to the clip as you can, or do you like it to kind of be wavy and let them pick at the looser ends?
I'll let Caesar go first, and then I'll let you know.
So, in my experience, what I do is I fold the pieces as little as you can because if you have it, big piece, they usually rip it off and it's floating all over the place. And the second thing is I always tried putting it across the whole area of the pinching area in the clip, because otherwise I think they just pull it off.
Yeah. Well, you got more surface area that way for that clip to hold on
Tension
to.
holds.
But I do
Absolutely.
feed that little piece after they're done, though. So just take it off, throw it in there, and they.
Well, yeah, you have monster tanks. I've fed his fish one time, and literally a sheet of nori lasts like 2 seconds in his tank. And it's like folded up into the littlest little corners, and it's just bam, gone.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
Well,
Yeah, he's got a
everything
lot of
eats
fish.
Seaweed. I mean, even the antheas were eating. So, I mean.
Senor.
So I would have to agree with you, Caesar, on how you feed. I mean, that's pretty much how I feed my noris. I fold it up into a really small square, try to get as much surface area of the seaweed on the clip so they don't pull it off. And that, like you said, it just prevents that from softening up and then floating around in the tank and just raising your phosphates up. It usually takes a bit before it softens up to the point where it just kind of rips off from flow or from fish, so I would say for the people who are listening, if you're feeding nori, just look at it, come back 5-10 minutes later and just see how much is floating around the tank. And then you might have to kind of change your technique and how you're putting it on the clip. But
Right. Oh, by the way, Jen will probably be joining us in a few minutes. So if you guys are curious about where she is.
taking care of some business right now. So,
Businesswoman.
so anything else you guys want to mention as far as like the seaweed herbivore, like feeding tang side of things?
Do you think it matters timing on your feeding for them, like in comparison to like lights out or lights on or type of time of day for it? I mean, for me at the store when I'm feeding, I always try to do it right around beginning of the day. Get them
When
more,
the lights come up.
Yep, right around light time comes on.
I would agree with that. Because if you feed at night, like my purple tang, he'll still come out and feed them. Doesn't matter when the lights are off. He detects seaweed, he'll come eat it. But
Making sure.
the other fish obviously aren't eating it. So then that seaweed's going to be sitting overnight, just kind of breaking down in the tank.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing so much because Caesar literally just like kissed the microphone to make sure that he was in range.
Gotta be close.
Making sure he abides by the 3-finger rule.
Yep.
No, mine is to be one because otherwise it's too quiet.
For those of you just listening, you'll have to go on YouTube and check out the video. Maybe you'll be able to spot it there. But
Hey, it's mine, so I know it's clean. I hope.
Or now we can't switch up the mics.
Well, that's my digital imprint there.
There goes that one for the guest mic.
Yep. There goes that.
Mm-hmm.
Ba-dum-ba-bum.
And you got herpes now.
Oh,
Wow.
What?
and this is New
That
Wave
says a
After Dark.
lot about you, Caesar.
I'm just kidding. I don't have herpes.
Dario, do we have some sanitizer?
Apparently, I'm too close to them.
Dario is our guy behind the computer and the camera here. So
Yeah. So, anyways,
Yeah.
how about we jump into pellets?
Ooh,
okay,
hot topic.
lead us there. Start us off.
Real hot mic.
I'm auto feeding pellets
What
twice a
type?
day. TDO,
Just TDO?
medium TDO. Yep.
Why?
Okay.
Because my fish love it. I really don't have any other reason. I don't know if they taste good or not.
You haven't
Uh,
tried it? I think that's next week's episode right there. Try a little TDO.
Yeah, no.
Well,
I don't wanna try
TDO
it
does
either.
have a lot of protein in it, and I think that's
Get jacked.
that's definitely something to look for when you're looking at like the dry foods, especially is how much protein. It should be up there in the top of the list of the ingredients.
I also believe TDO has a lot more of the vitamins and minerals in their recipe as well than most of the other
Yeah.
ones. That's their other big claim to fame.
I personally haven't tried PE pellets. Have you guys had any
I have.
experience with that?
You haven't. I don't like it.
I
Okay.
mix PE pellets and TDO at home and Algae Extreme.
Okay.
No, this is me not liking them has nothing to do with the food. It's good food. It's just that I don't like the shape of it. I don't
Yeah,
know.
they're kind of hard to mix together.
They're-
You guys will notice over the episode, Caesar is very picky about things.
Very.
I don't know. The
but
TDO
we- I
pellets
think
are
we all
perfect
are.
round,
Yeah.
and the
They're
other ones are
smooth.
just
Yeah.
weird. I don't know.
One thing I like about the TDO line of pellets is just the variety of different sizes you can get, especially if you're trying to breed like clownfish or something. They have like what the A, B size, those really small granular sizes. If you want to, get the smaller youngsters like the fry, feeding on a pellet. So,
the reason why I don't like them, and this is probably gonna be stupid, but I don't care.
Here we go.
I feel
truth
like
comes out.
it's that shape is not what I like, but also I feel like it's gonna hurt my fish because it's got pointy stuff. I know, it's stupid, but that's how picky I am. It's like I like my fish.
This just in, PE Pellets is getting sued for a
For
poking
stabbing your
of the
fish in the
fish in the mouth. Just in.
I love my fish. What do you want me to say?
I don't think you have to be ashamed for
I
loving
think-
your fish. I'll just go out there and say that much.
Yeah.
Sure, I brush their teeth every morning and
But-
every night. And,
I've never heard that the pokiness from the PE pellets is going to
I know
hurt
it's not
them.
a thing. I just feel that way. I'm a weird guy, okay?
I'm just trying to imagine the conversation with the customer regarding that.
No.
No, I'm like imagining the call to PE, like, "Bling, bling. Hey, so I noticed after feeding my fish, there's a hole in their mouth.
I feel like they're hurting.
Yeah.
Is this a thing?
Pristine Energetics. You guys make great products.
Yeah, we're not knocking
No,
it.
this is just
Also, we're looking for sponsors. So
this is just me being weird here.
I fully support their product. I feed it at the store.
Like
That's
I said,
funny,
it's good
though.
food. It's just
That is
it's just me
hilarious.
being picky with my fish and stuff. So.
That's fair. Do you guys feed any other pellets? Algae Extreme?
Well, yeah, the Seaweed Extreme
Or Seaweed
pellets.
Extreme.
Yeah, I think medium size, and then
Oh.
I do like the TDO. So similar. I'm sure that's the combination most of us use and most people in the hobby use, but the Seaweed Extreme is far in between.
That I
for
have
me,
tried,
but
and
yeah,
it's good. Speaking of pellets, I think it goes into also how much you're feeding, because pellets put
Big time.
a lot of stuff in the water.
yeah,
And I noticed with some of our maintenance clients that sometimes the auto feeder, we use the Eheim auto feeders usually. They have the opening open a little too much, and it also
Goes in.
I noticed that when the drum goes around, depending on the quantity of the food in it, it can drop more or less. So I would say stick to whatever is less.
I normally feed mine about half. I fill my Eheim drum about halfway just so that it does produce a more consistent roll with it. And I've also noticed that going back to with what Caesar said with the uniformed pellets of the TDO and
Bingo.
the algae, Seaweed Extreme, that really helps in comparison to the PE where it does have that kind of jaggedness to it where you have to do some weird things with your slider to make sure the correct amount comes out.
that's a really good point.
That's the big bummer I
yeah.
would say about
You
that.
mean the seaweed flakes, right?
No.
No,
Oh,
he's
well,
talking the PE
The
pellets.
PE pellets.
Yeah. Because I've noticed some of the people put seaweed flakes
Yep.
from two little
Yep.
fishes in it. So they have to open the gap a little more. But then in return, you get a bunch of the other pellets in.
At that point, it's almost worth getting
Two auto feeders.
auto
Yep.
feeders. So one
Exactly.
you have measured out for the flake amount and one for that heavier granule of the sinking.
Yeah, because if
Pellets.
you add that food and you're wondering why increase your phosphates, it's not the food, it's the opening. Because for sure you have to open it more to get those
The flakes.
flakes
out.
out.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah,
And those pellets, they're dense, they're heavy, so
Yeah,
they're gonna
they go down.
sit to the bottom of your auto feeder. So they're probably gonna be the first thing that comes out when that thing
Mhm.
spins around.
I've
So-
seen it happen.
Speaking of flakes, do you guys feed any flakes? Do we want to talk about benefits, between flakes or pellets?
I'll lead off this one. I do not feed flakes. I don't like flakes. And I don't like flakes simply for the fact that when I feed it, it tends to stay on the surface. And most of our aquariums nowadays have all surface skimmers on there in one way or the other. So I just find that it just goes right down into your filter socks, roller mat, whatever you have for that. So it just turns into more of a problem than a benefit in
Right.
what I've seen. I mean, what do you guys think?
I think my experience with flakes, I've used them before, but it's only when I have like a finicky fish that doesn't want to eat anything.
Mhm.
Other than that, I have no use for flakes.
I heard Anthias is like flakes, which is weird, but that's
I'm-
my one because
fish-
they always are up at that surface.
Yeah, fish will eat them.
Well,
and
and-
usually when I fed them, I put my fingers inside the water so they don't float. They sink or they go in through the current. But
And that's what I was going to say. If you're going to feed flakes, either get your hand or tongs underneath the surface of the water, or just like you would feed frozen, take a little jar out with some aquarium water, put the flakes in there, let them hydrate a little bit, and then put that into the system. But I think nutrition-wise, from looking at a lot of the labels we see on the products, they should be similar to most of the pellet food that you see out there, content-wise. Maybe I'm mistaken. I know there's some herbivore design flakes with more, seaweed and ingredients like that in them, but you obviously can find that, in the pellet side of things too.
is there since you guys have smaller tanks, is there an advantage of a certain food in a small tank? I don't know. Like flake or
Yes and no, I would say to that. Flake, I mean, as long as you're doing the appropriate steps to making sure that your fish are getting the food, I think that's going to be the biggest advantage to it. For instance, if you're just throwing cold frozen into it, of course, no fish is really going to peck at it. And going back to like the flake little tricks and hacks and stuff like that to get that to sink, I would say that would be the bigger advantage than anything. Since I have the Nano in the group, I would say I only feed frozen twice a week and I feed pellets every other day, just for that reason, to help keep my nutrients down.
Well, and one thing I was just thinking about too is like, I think it depends what like type of reef you have. If you have a lower flow system, like you might have more issues with pellets because you're going to have more dead spots in that aquarium versus like, a mixed reef SPS dominant tank, where typically you should be lifting up most of your detritus off the sand bed or the bare bottom, to where those pellets stay up and in the water column. But you might run into, if you're feeding pellets in a low flow system, where they kind of collect in a corner of the tank underneath a certain rock, and your fish will graze on that, but there's going to be some left over.
That's why it's nice to have a diamond goby, Sand 15 stars.
Yep. Even a cleaner shrimp that will go through
They
and
go
pick
through
them
those
up.
corners.
I don't like cleaner shrimp, but I'm an LPS guy. And I'll be honest. And hey, I have a reason why. I'm not just like, oh, my fish are going to get poked by
I
the
think I
hard
know what
pellets.
you're going to say.
It's because when you're feeding your LPS, those dang shrimp go up and clean and pick out all the food and the goodies that you're trying to give your LPS, therefore damaging their tentacles, in turn potentially killing your super sweet LPS.
He does love his
So
LPS.
you want to know what? They're out of here. And crabs. I don't have any crabs in my tank either, simply for that exact reason right there. I've seen crabs go and pick out pretty much the guts of my LPS, and I'm not about that life.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna agree with him on this one. It pisses me off when
is
you
frustrating.
have feeding your nice LPS and you look at them and they're like grabbing the food really nicely, and then here comes a fucking shrimp. Whoops, fudge shrimp, and
Beep. We're late.
Dario has that in post.
Yeah, but I get it. I know what you're saying.
That's
Yeah.
my opinion, and I'm sticking to it.
It is frustrating, especially when you've had it on that piece of coral and it's been sitting there for like 10 seconds. It's getting ready to actually put it in its mouth and eat it. And then that's when the shrimp comes and grabs it.
And
Okay,
then
but fish do that too.
Oh,
They
absolutely.
do. Yep.
And then that's why I just have like this little glow stick that I put in the aquarium, and I'm like sitting there as a madman shooing all of the the fish around. Like, no,
Hurry up, honey, eat it.
don't tell them my secrets.
Oh man.
Sorry, sidetracked there.
Yeah. So, anyways, let's go back to Frozen.
Ooh,
Bum,
frozen.
bum.
I guess, what do you guys feed what's your favorite frozen food?
I'm a Nano reef frenzy, simply because of Nano.
I'm assuming if it was a bigger tank, you'd just go regular.
Actually, I think I would stay with the Nano,
Okay.
simply because I do like the fact that it's blended a little bit more, so the chunks are smaller, so a lot more of the littler options in your tank have food. Because I've noticed in those bigger ones, they kind of still give you pretty good sized chunks of food.
You answer my question. I was gonna ask, what's the difference between the Nano and the
Size of
normal
The size of
food,
the
that makes sense.
granule.
Yep.
before it gets frozen.
And if any of you listening or watching don't know what we're talking about, LRS is the company that makes it. It's Reef Frenzy, which is a blend of bunch of different things, rotifers, mysis,
Clam,
Clam.
shrimp.
You even have some seaweed in
Scallops.
there.
I think there's squid.
There's a
Yeah,
lot of
there's a
stuff
lot.
in there.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a one-stop shop for you.
I also do mix in so at home I do the Nano. At the store I do the Herbivore Frenzy and the Reef Frenzy.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good mixture, and then just the regular PE mysis as well.
Yeah.
And I would say that's a little bit better product for mysis wise than most of the other ones. I just like the fatty acid that comes with it. I've noticed a lot more coloration in anthiases and things of that nature when you're giving them that option.
Cool.
What about you, Mr. Big Tank and Anthi
Oh,
owner?
Yeah,
so I
I
mix.
don't know if that's the plural.
Anthias
I
is.
don't know.
I don't know which one I like better, but
Octopi, I don't know.
That's where I went with it.
So I do Reef Frenzy and put some mysis in there. And what's the other one? Oh man. Anyway, I put 3 different frozen in there and just mix it all together, and that's what I feed.
Do you guys put any like additives into it, like silicon or
Garlic.
garlic?
Not
or-
unless there's something I see with a finicky fish or some sort of bacterial infection or something like that.
I started doing it for a copper band, and then I just kept doing it.
Garlic,
Just
Yeah.
garlic drops or whatever.
it's not going to hurt. So
They like
Oh.
it.
I feed straight Reef Frenzy, and then I supplement with dry food. So
to get the vitamins and goodies in there.
yep.
Nice.
So then,
The great topic now, the amount that you feed.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Because that's the big debate. So I'll start off with what I feed my fish. So yet again, I'm a Nano guy, and I'll give you Nano Life and Store Life. So Nano Life, my rule of thumb is that the stomach of the fish is roughly about the size of their eyes. So you're feeding something about the size of your pinky nail for frozen food for them. Simply because I don't want to raise my nutrients too much, so I have to keep very thoughtful of the amount that I'm putting in there. So that's pretty much what I do for frozen at home. Store wise, now I'm feeding 3 full displays and 6 frag systems that are fully loaded with fish. So take this with a grain of salt.
Fish and coral.
Fish and coral, pardon me. And that's ranging from everything from anemones all the way to SPS and everything in between. Some dendros and all the goodies too. I probably do. It's a good amount in
a
there.
buttload.
A buttload. I mean, I feed a lot, but I would rather clean up a lot instead of letting my fishies go hungry.
Well, that's the other thing. Like every week, you get to clean the system up. So I mean, what's happening there. What about you, sir?
Did you mention how many times you feed a day?
No, I didn't. I at the store I only feed once a day, unless yet again it's a finicky fish or something like that that I've noticed that they need a little bit more option to food and stuff like that. At home I feed the frozen once or twice a week, and then pellets probably every other day. At the store I do feed pellets. I would say kind of on the alternate. I do pellets every once in a while where I feed frozen every day.
Okay.
That. But we are also adding silicon and garlic to the frozen at the store to help with the vitamins, minerals, and all those goodies that would get misplaced
Yeah.
there.
The store definitely gets spoiled there. We
Yeah,
take care
big
of our
time.
fish and our corals pretty well. So I mean, we're throwing pretty much everything at them.
Well, we also have
within reason.
Michael.
Yeah.
He also, if he sees any fish that need more feeding, he'll feed twice or
Yeah.
3 times that system. So
Or he'll even whip up a little medicated batch for them too.
Yeah.
Well, of course, if it's not in a reef system, we do have a few fowlers there that you can do some things with.
Yeah, and that's typically exclusively what they use in QT. So Michael, and I think we'll probably have him on here for
I
a
think we
quarantine
will.
episode.
Yeah.
He's our fish husbandry expert. But I think they exclusively feed medicated food in the back for quarantine,
yep.
just as precautionary. Even if the fish are doing decent. So
It helps with getting any kind of internal
Yep.
parasite, internal bacteria through their system, and helps them out big time. I think I've noticed a much better improvement of fish when they have been given that opportunity.
Right.
So I have a question before we go on. Some people I know the feed, for example, mysis. Do you rinse it?
Ooh, I do
know people
not.
do.
At the store, we don't.
No, but I
Yeah.
mean, like
I've heard people do.
people do that, and VCA makes those, the portion feeders with
Yep.
the actual strainer built in, so you can rinse your
Rinse it
food.
out,
And
yeah.
I'm sure if you go on the forums, that'll
Everybody-
be a debatable topic
Oh, yeah.
on,
That's a
on
hot
nutrient
topic.
levels and rinsing your mysis or frozen food. But I personally don't. I think there's nutrients in that, and
I would
my
agree with
corals
that.
would consume it. So
yeah, I don't do it
Corals,
either.
bottom feeders, somebody will eat up that remainder goodies.
yeah, and it's just an extra step. The more steps you have in a reef tank, especially for me,
Yep.
Let's
the
be honest.
less likely I'm going to do it.
The easier of operation, the
Yeah.
better off it's going to be.
Lazy reefer over here.
I don't know. That might be his new
Efficient reefer.
Uh-huh.
nickname. Lazy reefer. Efficiently lazy.
Yeah.
So what's your procedure for feeding at your house?
It depends on the day and kind of where my nutrients are sitting. So, I'll play it by ear from there. But typically, average day looks like a little over, like, if you guys know a Hikari cube size, like the
Yeah.
larger cube size, it's typically like 1.5 of those in the same amount in Reef Frenzy. And maybe I'll mix in, some TDO or some seaweed extreme pellets, into that, while I'm defrosting it. Again, don't rinse it. I just, let it defrost. I'll typically take a turkey baster and once it's thawed out, I'll throw a little bit into the NEM, let some float, wait a little bit, maybe a minute later, throw in another little squirt of, the food and go from there. And then nori too. I'll typically do like a third to half sheet of nori, just because I have 3 or 4 tangs. I guess one of them's a juvenile, so he's a
Tang
little
police
baby.
in the house.
Yeah. But there's stuff for them to eat on the rockwork too in my tank.
That's what they all say.
Not a major algae outbreak, but there's stuff there. So I'll typically just do half a sheet, and that'll typically last close to a day. So I know it's not gone in a few hours. They're not starving in
Yep.
the system. So
All right, senor.
Interesting.
Let's hear what the people are waiting for.
No, I just remember the third food that I put in there. It's krill because I forgot I have eels.
Mm.
So
I didn't
Wait
know
a
you
minute.
had
Wait a
eels.
minute. You said eels, like plural, like you have more
Yeah,
than
like
just
water
a singular
snakes.
one.
Did you
Yeah.
just you
When did
didn't
you add these? I didn't know
You got a
had
snowflake
eels.
from the store
Yeah,
recently,
I know
didn't you?
that one.
2.
You have 2 snowflakes in there?
I bought 2 snowflakes.
Holy cow. So one of these days we're gonna have to get a full fish list of
Oh,
what you
sir.
have in there.
I
Because
don't
every
know.
day I get surprised, like you're like, oh yeah, I added this guy or that guy or this guy or that guy.
Or I looking back in QT, I see this really nice angel, and they're like, "Oh, that's sold already." I'm like, "Oh, who's that for, Caesar?"
Speaking of that, how's your gold flakes doing?
Good. He's growing.
Asshole.
Did you pick up any of the captive bred angels, either Majestic
should've.
or Regal, that we had?
I
Regal.
picked up a Regal.
The captive bred. You got the
No, it wasn't
thought he got a
captive
wild
bred.
one.
It was a wild.
It was like a sub-adult, wasn't it?
Yep.
Like
Yeah.
not full,
Yeah, he's about yay big.
like transitioning.
Yeah.
I think.
Is he still doing great?
no.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Like, I think they need captive bred is better. I think not only because of the thing that,
This just in: captive bred fish are better.
Hey,
Who would have thunk it?
Thanks. Anyways, the problem is that wild ones, it's hard to get them to eat.
Well, they're used to just a
Every
total different variety of
Yeah.
food.
yeah, I mean, including sponges
Yep.
and coral. So,
Sounds like he nipped some coral.
oh, for sure.
That's one thing with captive breds.
Oh yeah.
You would
Well,
think
pretty much
that they
any
wouldn't
angels.
nip coral because they're raised in a captive environment. But I've heard from a few people now that, dude, you might get lucky and have one that just is a weird personality and doesn't like it. But it's a gamble with any angel.
Yeah.
So
I've seen it personally in the store multiple times.
Yeah.
That's like ingrained in their DNA, I think.
Yeah, I think
I
it's
mean,
just one of
honestly,
those.
that's how they
See soft
live.
squishy, eat soft
Yep.
squishy.
Yeah.
Soft squishy, yummy.
So, anyways, I feed I feed frozen every other day now because with so many fish in there and too many nutrients going into the system.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Although I do have a lot of media though.
Do you still have your pellet feeder mabobber going on it?
Yeah,
Did you
you,
have an auto feeder
didn't
for
you
a
say
I
while?
have one on each tank. Yeah.
you said you feed twice on that, right?
Yeah. Twice a day, but not a lot. Just enough for them to
Lights on,
Yeah.
correct? Yep.
And then my wife, when I'm not home, she feeds Nori because I have an Achilles tank, and he needs to eat his seaweed.
Oh, don't
Nice.
mind me. I have my
Yeah. I
Achilles.
just have 2 snowflake
God
eels,
dang it.
Achilles, bunch of
I
angels.
can't say anything. So, anyways, I feed every other day, pellets every day, and auto feeders, and seaweed every day. And the way I feed frozen is I don't rinse it, and I do little bit at a time. And when they slow down, then I stop.
Don't let him lie to you guys. He literally pulls the chunks of out and feeds them by hand. I've seen it happen with my own eyes. Just literally just crumbles it right into the aquarium, and the fish are just boom, boom, boom. I sit there and I wonder, like, how does he come out of there without getting a fish bite in any way, shape, or form?
No,
It's
they
pretty
bite.
impressive.
They bite, but it's like
little
love
love
nibbles.
nibbles.
It's just
Building
like,
a bond with the fish.
It's like Papa, you know.
Can you pet any of your fish?
Yes. Actually, the Gulf Lake is pretty friendly.
Nice. Because at the store, we do have we have a puffer that I can pet. He's also tried to bite my finger off, but I now have a respect with him. He can pet him.
And we had that tile fish.
And
Yeah,
can't.
that was really awesome.
for
Until
those of you who don't have a tile fish,
they're another
awesome
great
fish.
personality style
Yeah.
fish, along with those
They
Midas
swim.
plenty.
They swim into your hand, and they'll
Yep.
just let you pet them.
Yep.
It's crazy.
That, or he just wanted to be out. He's like, just
I
take me
want
now,
to
please.
be
Take me
free.
back.
Yeah, take me.
He's probably getting bullied by that eel.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well, what do we want to move on to next as far as food?
nutrient levels.
Yeah. I guess
I mean-
that, yeah, we can tie that into like frequency because that'll obviously be dependent.
Yeah.
And I think we mentioned it a little bit, just kind of with how we feed ourselves. But what are some, I guess, what do you have to take into account?
Everything. Phosphate, nitrate,
There's your answer.
level, what
Yeah.
your biomedia is like, what your tank consumption level is like. I mean, there's quite a few different things to consider when you're feeding your fish. I mean, the most obvious one I think of is how many fish you have in your tank. I mean, if you have a 200-gallon tank and you have 5 fish in it, you're not going to need to feed a sheet of nori every day, 4 or 5 droppings of food every day type of a deal. I mean, I think that's one of those big ones that a lot of people just hear, oh, I have this fish that's going to be big. He's a baby now. He's in a big tank. I got to give him a bunch of food. And then all of a sudden, bada bing, bada boom, we have crazy nitrate spikes, crazy phosphate spikes.
Yeah. And we see
Things
that a
of that.
lot on the maintenance side
Yep.
of things when the customer or client is, feeding the fish themselves. So more often than not, people are more heavy-handed than they need to be.
Yeah.
Obviously, fish will grow faster, though, the more you feed it. So,
But
But-
your tank will get dirtier faster too.
correct.
I think that ties into like, because I've seen a lot of clients say it. Well, it's because I go to my tank and they want to eat. They look
They look
hungry.
hungry.
It's like, well, if you feed them, they'll eat for sure, and they're always going to be begging for food.
Yep.
Just how it is.
I think I've seen fish before puke up, and I don't know. I've seen it to where they'll be full, their stomach is protruding,
Antias do it.
You
and
can
they'll
see their
still
belly.
they'll still try and eat, and
Yep.
there'll be food left over. So they'll always try to eat.
It's in their DNA.
Yep.
They're
They're
in-
opportunistic.
I like to say in the ocean, there isn't just this magical hand that comes out of nowhere and goes, oh, here's a little frozen food for you today.
Right.
Or here's the perfect amount of pellets for you.
That's a good point, though. My Antias, I've noticed. I mean, obviously, I know what to do now, but they get full, and if you keep dropping food, they'll hold it in their mouth, and when you walk away,
Yep.
comes out, and that's that.
Yep.
Keep on nibbling.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say, know what your system's at, first of all. If you're not testing, test. Preferably once a week at least. and make sure you know what your nutrient levels are first. And you can always adjust your feeding. We were talking before we went live, like it's a balancing act, with a reef tank. So you want to make sure you balance out, what's going in and what's coming out. And what's going in, the one source is what you feed and obviously the fish you have in it. So those are the two factors you can kind of control, and you're not going to know where to go unless you don't know what your system's at. So,
well, I mean, if you like feeding a lot, feed a lot. Just feed a little bit every time. You don't just drop it on there like.
Yeah. Or if you want to dump a lot of food in, like really go excessive, that's fine. But the intake and the outtake have to balance out. So that means you got to do more heavier, frequent water changes. Maybe add GFO or some sort of media that removes nitrate and phosphate, NOPOC, something like that. But
big Fuge or big algae scrubber
skimmer,
or whatever,
roller mat.
Heavy in, heavy out, which is always a good and bad thing, I like to say.
Yeah.
Because you got to go from there.
So, anyways,
I think we should talk a little bit about coral feeding as well, because that kind of ties in with
I knew he was gonna go into
I had to sneak one in there one way. All this fish talk, man.
Okay, we're going to take a little side detour down the coral route. I'm sure we can have a episode just on this, but let's dive into it now that we're on the topic of nutrients and everything.
We could do 2 episodes.
So first,
directed.
Do we want to even talk about dive into what we do for coral feedings at all, or do we want to strictly talk about nutrients?
Well, on the coral feeding side, I think we can do a short, couple minute thing. And it's probably gonna be mostly him. I don't feed my corals, so.
You don't feed any of your corals at all?
No.
I thought you used to feed your SPS.
How much food I drop in there,
and also how many fish you have in there. Fish poo, the best coral food there ever will be. That is my belief on fish.
And you know what I like to see? I know, another weird one.
Fish poop.
Kinda, but when you have the poop come out and it lands right on the colony, poof, there you go.
Yet again, another great Caesarism.
Yeah. I'm just saying, nothing goes to waste. A little bit of it, but
Well, that's also the perfect biosphere that you've made there in Happy Reef Tank, where that is true, where everything should not go to waste. There should be something utilized in eating everything.
I do have heavy out, like you were saying.
Yeah.
I mean, big skimmer, big Fuge, and everything is heavy there.
His Fuge is massive. Isn't it a 40 breeder?
No, it's a long one. It is, but I had to make the space that I have to put it in had to be only like a foot wide, so it's long.
That's what she said.
Like a run. Is it like a runway Fuge?
Pretty much.
Pretty much. So it goes in on one side, comes out on the other, and it's just a long tank that I had to custom to the edge of my wall there.
Okay.
So
I'm in the same boat as you. I've tried feeding. To me, the benefits don't outweigh the negatives with it. I saw huge spike in phosphates, algae outbreaks from even a little bit of, reefroids or benepets or whatever the ground food for your corals is. So I just stopped doing it, and I'm mostly SPS. I do have torches. I do have.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yes, I do have mushrooms. I do have zoas. I do have chalices. Euphilia.
A chalice.
There's nothing in there. There's no meat. A chalice. Yeah.
Well, you're little. Can't afford to put more chalices in there, but
I don't have any meat corals. So there's not like really required corals in the tank for food. So for me, it's like I don't really see much benefit going that. And typically in SPS, if you feed them too much, and this is my opinion,
bad.
Yeah. Disclaimer alert. My opinion is, you can have them brown out if you feed them too much. So.
Oh, absolutely. I think it goes in with, you can roll reverse too. If you feed them too much, or if they're not getting their appropriate nutrients, I think you'd see them brown out pretty quickly as well with that one. But what about your anemone? That was my big question.
When I'm doing the frozen, I'll just give them a little squirt of the turkey baster right into the tentacles. And I mean, the thing's growing.
Sorry, bad thought.
Come on, Caesar, keeping it PG
In the
here.
gutter, yeah. Sorry.
He
Prove
grows crazy fast though. So, I mean, if I want him to grow quicker, I'll feed every time I feed. Otherwise, if I'm like, okay, you're getting out of control and starting
Need
to
to
get too
pump
big for
brakes.
my liking, then
Oh yeah,
I
you getting
just
too fat out of control, huh?
calm down, Caesar.
Nice. So I guess we'll come to me then.
Yeah.
At home, do I feed? Yes, I do feed coral food at home. I only feed it probably about once a month, and then I do it right before I do my water change. Now at my home aquarium, I didn't really get into it too much at the quick little intro that I do. So I have a 14 gallon that has a full Apex system on it, and it has a water change system tied into it. So throughout the week, I'm doing a 5 to 10 gallon water change, depending yet again on nutrients and stuff like that. So really, I only do a sand bed cleaning and things like that once a month on that setup, just to make sure that I'm keeping it pristine and water chemistry is where I want it. So I will do my feeding right before I do that water change on it. And I only feed Benepets. And also, disclaimer alert, I'm going out there and saying I do half of the recommended amount of Benepets. So I'm doing very minimal introduction on it. And then normally I try to feed right around dusk or dawn type. So like right before my lights turn on or right after they turn off. I just noticed that their feeding tentacles are out a little bit more and they are a little bit more accepting of the food.
Yeah.
And also another disclaimer is my tank is all LPS. Yeah. So they need the dirty love, things like that. Sorry, fish just slapped back behind
Fish
us
is
there.
hungry. Heard us talking about food.
Since you're talking about that, have you noticed if you feed your, well, not you particularly, but I've noticed that some corals that you feed, not you, but I'm saying like whoever feeds,
Yep.
sometimes it's too much, and I have seen the corals spit it out,
Absolutely.
and that's just waste.
Yep.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
So
And that's really why I've toned it down to, I know there's a lot of companies that recommend that weekly feeding on some of those LPS style corals, but I just, I noticed that they spit it out more often or they just don't look as fluffy and happy if you kind of give them too much availability to the food.
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest, takeaway everyone listening can get from this is like, if you're going to feed your corals, less is more to start with.
Mhm.
They don't need it,
No.
so start slower and keep an eye on your nutrients first. Typically the manufacturer recommendations, like Ted said, is more than what you
More
should
than
be.
generous.
There's a lot of nutrients packed into those foods. So,
And another thing we have to think big time about is that corals don't just eat that food. They're going to eat the phosphates in your system, or excuse me, the nitrates in your system. They're going to continuously eat, similar to like your fish and stuff like that. They're going to be doing things when
fish
you're not
food.
feeding them.
yeah, and they're consuming the zooxanthellae that
Yep.
is in their flesh, from photosynthesis. Not to mention, if you have an established system, you're going to have copepods in the water column, maybe some phyto, all these different, small crustaceans and different things that you can't really see in your tank. Corals consume that throughout the day. So,
Absolutely. Which is a huge thing because a lot of people are like, oh, they look starving. And it's like, well, what are your numbers at?
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I'm at 0 and 0. Well, yeah, they are really starving.
right.
And also every system is different, and I know it's cliche now, but it's true. Some people
100% true.
run very low nutrient and they're fine. Some people run really high nutrients and they're fine too.
Yeah.
It's just about what your tank is about. So
We're going to go into that was one of the ones on the idea board, an episode regarding nutrients. So if you are listening and you want to learn more about that, just know that it's coming. It'll be in the works here soon. So,
and also since you touched the topic of like less is more, that goes for any supplement.
Oh, big
Yes.
time. Oh,
Yes.
big time.
Like anything that you are gonna add, like aminos and all that, just start with half or a third of what the recommended thing is, and
You can always add more. You can't take it out.
Yep.
once it's in there. Well, you can, but you're going to have to do a lot of water changes to get that out of there. A lot.
So aminos, that reminds me, do you guys consider aminos coral food? And did you include aminos in the
Ooh.
thought process of coral feeding?
Ooh, good question. I'll lead this one off because these guys don't feed anything like that to their tank. Well, I know they feed aminos, but I do not think aminos are a coral food. I do think that aminos definitely play tribute to the corals, but I think they're closer to, they're just water conditioning to it, where I think they're making the water column more prime to their, giving them the best footing forward. I don't think necessarily it's going to be like, oh, here's a Burger King burger to your corals. I think it's more or less getting them into the atmosphere of
Yeah.
food.
I think we're on the same page with that, where it's when you look at what actually happens with amino acids, and this happens in humans too. Think of it more as like a vitamin or a supplement to the food rather than the actual food source.
Yep.
So it's just making things more nutritious and helping the health of the coral, but it's not a direct food source.
Well, it's just more available.
Yep.
Because your food already has aminos in it.
Most salts even have aminos in it.
Yeah,
Yep.
you're just making more aminos available to them. It does help with coloration and stuff, no doubt.
Yep.
But also you can overdo it.
Absolutely.
And
Big
if
time.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I've noticed I had experience where you overdo it,
It goes
you
bad
can
quick.
get recession. Yeah.
And not all aminos are built the same.
Nope.
We've learned that. So there's some
There's
brands that are better than others, and I guess we don't need to call those out right now. But
Nope.
I would also say for all of those euphilia lovers out there, I've noticed that there is a definite direct play with the amount of aminos to the flesh of your euphilia and stuff of that nature. Those really low nutrient, low everything systems, you can see the flesh is very struggling on it, where you get them into that kind of heavier nutrient, heavy aminos, heavy everything. You get a little bit thicker, happier flesh look on
Yep.
it. And I think that plays big time into your amino acid contributing and making sure that they have the availability to the food.
Sorry, I kissed the mic again.
God, this guy.
That was not on purpose. I turned and it was right there.
That's what they all say.
So
I think we're all on the same page with aminos. That
yeah,
does everybody feed their tank aminos?
I started recently. I'm trying a different product.
What are you trying now?
The stuff that you got a
The
bottle of
KZ LPS?
no, the acro something.
Oh, Acro Grow
Yeah.
or
Acro
Glow. Excuse me,
Acro
Glow.
So
By
I'm
KZ.
I'm giving it a try just to see.
Oh, it's KZ. I
Yep.
haven't heard of that one. Okay.
So, but so far, I've only been dosing it for a couple of days, so haven't seen any changes yet.
I also am a KZ guy. I like the LPS by KZ, but that's at home. In the store, I use Restore by Brightwell. I really am fond of that for amino acid.
Yeah.
Oh
Absolutely.
yeah, you recommended that. Yeah.
Yep. I recommend that to everybody who's having any problems with any sort of tissue issues on LPS, even to SPS, doing a dip in that, and then also introducing it into your aquarium as the dosing option as well.
Ooh, speaking of dips, we should make another episode of that.
Well,
we'll- we'll-
dip,
I
we
like
dip.
that.
We can do a
I
dip
like that
episode.
recipe that you have for the LPS bacterial disease infections.
Oh yeah, I've done a lot of side research and just kind of doing some investigation on as to
ATO pump.
what's going on with our LPS, because a lot of the times, I mean, we dip them in normal coral dip, and then 2 weeks later, all of a sudden, we're losing heads randomly and stuff like that. I've noticed that a lot of those things come in with bacteria, so it's just a little fun bacterial dip that I've concocted through research and other people doing research. Big shout out to quite a few internet people on that one.
So just to recap, how often should we feed coral?
Great question. I'm going to start it off with know your system. Know if your system is going to consume it or it's going to consume your system. That would
I
be
like
the
that.
big, that would be my biggest help for it. I genuinely recommend people saying about once a month to once every other week. Now, if you have an ultra low nutrient system and you have the appropriate tools for exportation, then I would say you could probably crank it up and go some craziness to it because you're getting appropriate results out of your water. Now, I would definitely say if you're in a low nutrient system and you don't have those things in your system, then keep going with what you're doing. I mean, unless you're seeing tissue recession or something like that, you're doing something right. So why mess with it? But it really boils down to your individual tank is going to let you know. At the store, I take care of 12 different ones. There's 2 of them that I feed weekly, and then every other one
I
is
take care of 12 different
once.
ones.
Every other one is like once a month, once a blue moon. When I notice that they're not looking the best, then I'll give them a little bit of love, but that's about it.
So basically, if it's not broken, don't fix it.
That's kind of my rule of thought. I mean, and I don't want to say that I'm stuck in my ways. I definitely do side research and try to find the best available products and best available methods. But so far, my method has worked pretty damn good, in my opinion. I mean, what do you guys think? You see it in a different light than what I see.
I like the idea of doing, the coral feedings before your water change, like immediately before, because it's the best of both worlds. The corals are getting the food they want. And then you're also exporting, any uneaten food out of that system to reduce the swing in nutrients. So I can definitely agree with that. If you are going to feed, try to do it that way, or just make sure your exportation is there to keep up with it.
Also, if you guys are gonna feed your corals, I think spot feeding is best.
Yep.
I know that myself, before I stopped doing it, I used to do the broadcast, just throw it in there, but you can overdo that so quickly. So
going back to the tank will consume you on that one.
And a trick that I was kind of doing when I was feeding the tank is I was spot feeding, like you said, but I would make sure obviously it flows off at that point. There's there's no movement in the system.
Blow off, skimmer off, everything off,
right.
pretty much.
But then after, 5-10 minutes, maybe 15, I kick on the wave makers, but I leave the return off. So then it just cycles that
That's a good
food
idea.
throughout the aquarium, so that if I missed a coral, if there's anything else, they can eat it. But again, know your system. Be careful with that, because then you could have issues like vermitid snails, algae outbreaks. That food could collect in rocks.
Sterina starfish. We
Yep.
have so many
bristle
Yeah.
worms.
Yep, you're feeding, because then that food's getting everywhere in the
Spaghetti
system.
worms.
So all the nooks and crannies. So just be careful with that. And then obviously kick the returns on and get it out. But like in an ideal world, I think, spot feeding, cycle it for a little bit, and then do what Ted says, where, you do a water change immediately after to get everything else out of that water column. So
Yeah, and if you don't have time to feed your corals, then probably don't do it.
yeah.
I
And
mean,
most corals, barring like sun corals and dendros, are
No.
photosynthetic.
Yep.
So they produce algae in the corals that they use to feed. So really all they need is light, but some corals definitely do benefit from feeding, especially the meat coral side of things. So again, you kind of have to balance it out and see what works best for you. So
Unfortunately, kind of a lot of things in the saltwater tank environment is totally where you're playing that balance game, where there isn't a perfect recipe set in stone or something like that. It's kind of knowing and understanding what's going on with your
Right.
tank. If I do A, what is going to be expected with B type of a deal, I would say.
yeah, and even if you have the exact same setup, the exact pounds of dry rock and sand, and it's the same tank with the same equipment on it, set up with the same salt water, you could have a different bacterial diversity in there, and the tanks are going to react differently to different things. So
100%.
every tank is different.
Heck, if you even change your media halfway through your tank and you used to know what it is, you're going to change the bacterial diversity, and therefore you change the whole pretty much makeup of your tank, how it consumes your phosphates, how it consumes your elk, how it consumes everything type of a deal.
I know this is not the topic, but you think that ties into like when you take a coral from a tank and you put it in the other one, it totally changes colors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think it does. I think
Anyway,
there's
that's a topic for a different episode.
I think there's an availability of amino acids where you see a different coloration on them.
Well, and I think some of it too is the actual makeup of the water. So your major elements like calcium alkalinity, if it's even a little bit of a swing that drastic, it just takes time for that coral to adjust and become fully happy again. But I definitely think you're onto something with nutrients and that having an effect on it and the bacterial diversity. So
All right.
Is there anything else that you guys think we missed as far as feeding fish or?
Oh, I'm sure we're gonna.
I think
be
there's a
touching it.
few, but For the most part, I think really what it boils down to is knowing how many fish you have, what the consumption of your fish are, and or what your tank can handle. Because yet again, you can feed your tank, but all that you're going to end up doing is feeding your workload.
Mhm.
I mean, would you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
Unless you have a straight, like a regimen that you follow it strictly, then you're gonna be okay. But otherwise,
You got to balance the in and the out.
Yep.
yeah,
Big time.
And
Otherwise, your tank
it'll
won't do it.
Yeah, it'll take trial and error to do that. I mean, you're not going to figure it out right away. I mean, even if Caesar, Ted, or myself set up a new tank in our houses tomorrow, we're not going to know what the proper amount to feed that tank is until a few months after,
Doing
it's
it.
kind of settled in.
you
So
pack it with fish.
Caesar's mentality. Mine is pack it with coral. He's pack it with fish.
how many tanks
no.
did you say you had in your 14? Like 10,
I don't want to
10,
talk about that.
12, something like that?
50, sir. They're
I have-
lined up.
I have
Have
a
you,
lot.
did you think about getting those Fox faces we have right now?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I really do want one. So to preface this, I'm going out there. We have legitimately baby fox faces. They're probably about 1.5 to 2 inches big.
They are tiny.
They're tiny little baby guys. And really why I want them is I have a little bubble algae in my setup because yet again, I have a little heavier nutrients because I have a bunch load of fish in there.
He loves to feed the corals.
Yeah. But the thing is, for that fish,
It would be
that would
perfect.
be the equivalent of an adult-sized fox face having over 100 gallons
Yep,
of swimming
absolutely.
area because it's so small.
It's so tiny. Granted, he would only be able to live there for a few months, but it would still
Yeah.
be the perfect
But I
little
think
guy for
you
it.
might know like a fish store or something you could bring him to, and
I
he
hopefully
gets
do.
too big. Yeah.
I don't know if there's any close to you.
Nope.
No,
No, I have a little bit of a drive to get to one. But not as bad as the Wisconsinite over there.
Yeah.
That'll be another topic.
Anything else, guys?
Nope. Oh, I have to do my Ted's tip of the week.
Oh, there you go.
Hold on. No, go ahead.
Okay, guys, are you ready for this one? It's going to be very serious, very helpful. Going to help everybody out.
Just
All
a
right.
tip.
Drum roll. My tip is don't eat yellow snow.
Excellent advice.
Never done
Especially
it.
in
I
the-
don't think I
especially
will.
in the
Top notch,
Midwest.
especially in a heat blast that we're going through right now. But that's my fun tip. My real tip is helping keep your tanks colder during these summer months. A few little tricks and ideas that you can do. Turn your lights off during high time. So like during your normal brightest point of the day. If you're running like T5s or even those high-end LEDs, they do put out some heat. So that will help lower it a degree or two. And if you're struggling still past that, another cheaper fun option is just literally putting a fan on the side right there and blasting it right into the tank. That'll help cool it
Top of the
down.
water.
And last but not least, throwing some ice bags in there in your sump in any return area. That'll help lower your tank temperature
Yeah.
as well.
And just keep in mind if you're working on the tank, especially with T5s, try not to get your beard on it or it might start on fire.
I was gonna say that, but you beat me to it.
I forgot on purpose. I forgot those beard jokes.
Yep.
Yeah. They keep
For
it
those of
coming.
you who don't know, check out last week's podcast where Ted has a fun story about burning his beard working on a client's tank.
And that was kind of my tip for last week is don't burn your beard on a T5 setup.
How do you get your beard? How do you burn it and you don't even notice?
I
Until
just wanna
someone
know
tells
what-
you it's on fire.
I want to know what that T5 setup looks like after doing that. So
I had
there's
to
just
change the
hairs,
light bulbs.
burnt hairs stuck to it.
I
and
definitely had to change the light bulbs after that.
that's rough. Well, we'll see you guys next week with another episode of New Wave After Dark.
We
If-
haven't decided what our topic is for next week. What are we going to do?
We haven't yet, so we'll have to. Maybe we kind of continue the trend and go into nutrients, do an episode on nutrients,
I think so.
or
Kinda
It's gonna be a
Tom,
surprise.
Nutrients?
No, I say it's gonna be a surprise because we don't know.
we honestly don't know, but it could be nutrients.
I mean, we're already diving into it, so
Yeah.
probably might as well.
Probably nutrients, but we might throw
I
a
don't
curveball.
support that decision.
Why?
Okay,
I like
you
to
have a
know.
topic.
Nutrients.
All right,
Set in
it's
stone.
Nutrients.
Okay,
There you
nutrients
go.
next week. If you guys have questions for us, feel free to go on the website, newwaveaquaria.com/podcast, and submit your question on the form there, and we'll try to answer it in a future episode. Doesn't have to relate to the topic next week, but if you just have a question in general, we'll try
Just
to fit it
any.
in on here. So it might spark some ideas for us to talk about. So
Cool.
Other than that, Brendan, see you guys later. This is Ted and
Oh, it's
These
my
are
Your
turn.
sign out, Ted.
It's Ted the Mountain Man Morris. I actually really like that.
say something
That
inspirational.
that was awesome for that intro. I felt like a WE wrestler or something like that.
The Mountain Man.
So thank you for that. And I held it in this whole entire time. So that was my inspirational thing. The other one that I will leave you with is I don't have a good one. I want to do Ron Burgundy. You stay classy, Minnesota.
/ wherever you live.
Yep.
All right. This is Caesar. Senor, your favorite Mexican. Peace.
We'll see you guys next week.
Oh, I thought there was a dog down here.